call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming. First up on our agenda is our public concerns. Are there any public concerns that anyone would, for any non-agenda items? Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Two comments, not to be adjudicated later on, but number one, I understand that the minutes for the prior meeting were only posted at 9:27 a.m. Hawaii time today, the day of the meeting. I wonder if these minutes were also available on the N-Plan site, and if there's a way that such could be included with the email that distributed the agenda for this meeting as well. Secondly, about the email that was generated, it may have contained some semi-spurious hyperlinks which did not appear to lead to the reference information cited as agenda and minutes. I'm just wondering what can be done to proofread or test the outbound correspondence from the commission or commission office before notices are sent out in a widespread manner. Thank you.
One more. I'm sorry, pursuant to recent ruling by OIP, we're not allowed to respond to questions. So this is just for public comments. Thank you. Are there any other public concerns? Hearing none, we can move on to our next agenda item, and that is approval of the committee member minutes, from Monday, October 21st. Are there any amendments? Yes.
I did just want to announce that, as the previous speaker mentioned, that was just an oversight. As I was out of town, I didn't communicate with Dylan. The minutes were completed. They were just not included in the mail out. So if you guys want to postpone to the next meeting, that's fine. We're still within the deadline for Sunshine Law, which is fine.
Yeah, I saw the Sunshine Law was 40 days, and then in the plan it says 30 days. So we're still well within
this is 28
the
days,
required.
Yeah.
So
just want to share that
depends,
information.
Yeah, it depends on the rest of the committee whether there's a desire. But I would add, I don't think this is a problem, but a lot of this says to retain this section. I would just like to say retain without change or alteration or something. So maybe in the future, just as you put that, when we go through these,
I can amend these.
You don't need to amend this. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's correct. It's just I think maybe it might be better to retain without modification.
Okay.
Yeah, just for future reference. I don't think we need to change that. Are there any other proposed changes or amendments?
Are you on 307? No.
Approval.
No, I'm on approval of the minutes, from October 21st.
Oh, it sounded like you're talking about that.
Well, it's in the.
But they were planned.
Well, in the minutes, each of the changes were documented. So
yeah.
Rather than just retain, I'd say retain without modifications. I mean, it's just a little bit more definitive. Though this is obviously correct.
Understood.
So just personal preference. So again, I'll ask: are there any other amendments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So
Larry and Lloyd, was that a second?
have a second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. So next up on our agenda is our new business, and first up we have a discussion of a strategy to review the complaint provisions, and I listed those out. And the reason we're having the discussion is because that is obviously an area that the commission wants to have revised in the NCO. So it's just, I think it might behoove us and make it more efficient if we were to actually talk about how we want to go forward. And I know we discussed some things, so if you'd like to discuss that with the committee now.
Yeah, just briefly, the complaint process as a whole is, we may have some ideas that of course we'll bring before the commission, but basically we just wanted to apprise everyone that, our office is interested in looking at maybe how we can develop something that works better for the commission in terms of how we go about the complaint process. As we know, it's been a lot of complaints, and just how we can even get to maybe even potentially resolving those complaints before they get to the level of a commission complaint. But there's not even a process for that on how we can maybe work things out with a board if they're having issues or something. So just, we are just going to maybe looking to just start coming up with ways that we can present ultimately to the committee maybe a more refined process for complaints.
And I think one of the discussions was, it's obviously gonna take a lot of work to come up with some sort of model. So it's just a feeling of reassurance by the committee that they're gonna take that seriously. I certainly said as one member, agree to that. So do I hear any dissent?
No, it's
Yeah.
very important.
And so, yeah, we would greatly appreciate any input from the NCO and you guys, the NCO has probably the broader picture or insight into the application of the rules. So yes, we would love to hear that.
Yeah,
So-
and that was sort of the impetus for this, is because, you know, oftentimes we're tasked with administering this stuff. We have to figure out a way that works efficiently with our office, and there are costs associated and stuff like that for some of this stuff. And so even from a financial perspective, it's important that we're, you know, using funds wisely and whatnot, so.
Okay, are there any questions about that? I do have a second part, but, okay, hearing none. I will tell you too, that there was some, we discussed when we would take that up, and there was a concern that the complaint procedures maybe do need to be expedited a little bit. And if we're talking about the whole plan, it doesn't look like it's actually going as fast as maybe would be, you know, hopeful. Or I mean, I think it's going along okay, but it probably some of the complaint procedures need to be reviewed sooner. So there was a request made that maybe we should think about doing that separately and going through that review process where you have the public hearings and you actually ask for that to be adopted before we go with the rest of the plan. And what would be, is that something the rest of the committee would be willing to do, or do you feel like that's a bad idea, or do you want to think about it, or how would you like to proceed?
Well, given the fact that that seems to take up a lot of you guys' time, and I remember when I was on the commission with Tom, there were a lot of complaints that it seems like most of your time seems to be spent dealing with those kinds of issues. So it might be worthwhile to help you guys to take that separately, just at least from my perspective, because I think for most people, I mean, that seems to be the one thing. I'm gonna file a complaint, or you go ahead and file a complaint. I mean, that seems to be the one thing everyone says. So I would say that it might help. And our goal here is to be supportive of you guys. So.
Anything further? So okay, Tom, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick comments.
Tom, if you would identify yourself for the record, please.
Sure, and I hope that picks up.
Yeah, Kevin's up here. So is the
Okay.
microphone. So here you go.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Tom Heinrich, speaking in my individual capacity. Just a couple of general comments. As we discussed in an earlier meeting, the start really of the overhaul of the neighborhood plan was exactly based on problems with the complaint process. And the goal when we started was, how do we actually get rid of the complaint process as it was then set up? Unfortunately, we couldn't do that because of other applicable laws or whatever. That was the end of 1997 that we started that conversation on complaint process, etc. I would well argue now that times have changed in many ways, okay? And for later discussion that you guys have already started, which I strongly support, and that is that idea to possibly exempt the neighborhood boards from the sunshine law, or at least many of the elements. The key here is there are several other alternatives by which I think the commission, via the neighborhood commission office, needs to be accessible to complaints. I'll say it that way.
Okay, we haven't really gotten into the substance yet.
No,
so
and
it
that's
sounds like
why-
you're talking about substance.
Well, and that's why I'm staying away from that.
Okay.
But when you look later on the agenda today at -401 and 402, that was added back then with that effort in order to say, you know, there's a lot of stuff that comes in that sometimes it's folks just aren't aware or whatever, that the executive secretary in that voice really is a good buffer. And there are some other ideas for later discussion on this, but I think it is a very good idea and can be done much more timely with some commitment from Corporation Counsel to help out and make it much more timely. To consider, what are we talking, chapter 20, I think at the moment, which is the complaint process, or chapter 19, and deal with that in its own universe, because it really is in its own universe for that particular process. Last quick comment, one size does not fit all in a contested case hearing. The Neighborhood Commission and the Neighborhood Board system is not the Board of Land and Natural Resources or the Board of Water Supply or whatever. But when you look at HRS, in essence, it is. And that's where we need some help, both in ideas as well as working with Corp Counsel to say, from other ideas for discussion later, how do we do this so that in fact complaints can be dealt with, but done so meaningfully, which doesn't take such an exorbitant amount of time and effort, particularly of the commission, in a process which I would argue is still largely contemplated not to be able to do much. And we need to change that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that a little bit of maybe what we could do is, if the commission can put together a proposal, say by the next time we meet or the next meeting thereafter, then we will probably take a break from the process that we're under right, at that point in time, and go directly to the complaint procedure. And once we finish that, we can then make a determination if we want to skip directly to the, go back to the commission, obviously. And if the commission approves, then go directly to the public hearing. Just think about that, but that's sort of the thought out there. Okay, any last words? Thank you. So then now we can jump into the actual review of provisions. And first up, we have section 3-1-301, and that's under the current plan, that's 2-11-301. And it's the commission, and the first one is the attendance of commissioners. As we've done before, I'm not going to read the provision unless anybody wants that, and just sort of ask anybody if they have any comments or revisions. So Larry, please go ahead.
I'll be honest with you, this is one of the reasons why I came to the commission, is because I was very concerned about commissioners not making their commitments.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and went through all the minutes, take a look at my colleagues to find out who has missed the most meetings and where were the repercussions. And I noticed that a former chair missed a number of meetings. And of course, as a board member, as a board chair, as I went back reading minutes and all that stuff, I never saw anything to say why that chair was missing all those meetings. And yet, commission meetings continued with the vice chair being able to do it. But there was nothing that went out to other chairs to let them know why is a commissioner chair missing these meetings. And then presently we have a commissioner that has missed 9 meetings this year and 6 meetings last year. And there seems to be no repercussions. And to me, we all took the oath. We came on for the same reasons, the highest personal integrity, to do the right things. But the other thing is to be committed to the commission, attend meetings. And the way I feel, what's good for the gander is good for the goose. I mean, you guys have a good system in place right now that I have no issues with. My board members, if they miss a meeting, they miss that 3rd meeting, you guys got that letter to go out officially to let them know that, hey, you're making an impact on the board and the community because you signed up to represent them and you're not making the meetings. Now there are excuses for that, whether you're ill, whether you have your professional job that you have, things that you got to do, but it's all up to the chair. And when it comes time for that meeting, that the board has to review and determine whether to retain that particular board member, the chair's involved at that. And I'll be honest with you, I have always been open as a chair of the neighborhood board to listen to my board members. They have their reasons. And there have had times where somebody's missed 4 meetings, but when you're missing half the meetings out of the year, somebody else could have been in that place that wanted to be there. So I think this thing needs to be, I think there needs to be some repercussions put in here that our commissioners are held to the highest standards, and we need to have something in here to say that when you miss 3 meetings, just like regular boards, you get a letter. And I look at it with Richard's the guy, because my thing is for our commission meetings, if I'm not gonna attend, I owe you a phone call or an email to say, Richard, I can't make it today because of this reason. You know, I can tell you what the reason is. And, but when it comes up to 4th time, I expect you to tell me, Larry, you've missed 4 meetings already. And that's highlighted with the public. So I just wanted to bring that up.
I agree with Larry. I think the commissioner should be held, and as a former commissioner, I think you need to be held to the same standard as boards. It doesn't seem fair that, you know, they don't show up. And then I know it's actually, in this case, has affected meetings where you can't do anything because you don't have quorum. But yeah, I'm with you, Larry. I think we need to add that. I think it should just mirror what we do with board members. That's all. Keep it simple. Just mirror. They miss 3, they get a letter, they gotta pony up, or they get kicked off, you know? I don't see why not. I mean, you make a commitment.
Richard, you're the only one who hasn't chimed in here.
No, I don't.
We have a short.
I don't disagree. I think what I hear, the discussion, the way it's going is, commission should put itself on the same level as the boards in terms of attendance. So if that's the case, I have no problem with that.
I agree.
And we would just incorporate similar language into the plan to reflect, you know, what we would do. The good thing I think that the boards have is, you know, they have the discretion to take the person off the board or say not. For example, I can recall one where one of our board members had military duty, and he was in the Guard, and he got called for, you know, emergency duty or whatever. But he was a resident, and he got called, and he missed a number of meetings. So it was, you know, duty called, you gotta go. So we support that. And, you know, we didn't tell him to get off the board. You know, so you have discretion depending on what it is. I mean, people get sick, and all of those things are mitigating reasons. So as long as the commission has discretion to what they do, I think, as with the board, I think.
That's why I think it should
Trust
mirror
it.
with
We
the
can
board.
trust their judgment.
Yeah.
I mean, and we have told people, you're off the board, we have a vacancy.
So I
So
have
we've
that.
gone both ways.
Yeah, I don't have the provisions right in front of me, but I assume that we can mirror the language.
I would say I don't wanna say it's a concern, more of just a maybe need to be looked in further, is that I understand the sentiment of them being like the boards, but it isn't an exact 1-for-1. Unlike the board members that are in an election, the commissioners are appointed. So I don't know if there's.
Oh, so.
It's
yeah.
not,
Okay.
the boards normally can bring someone on.
So whoever, for example, the city council appointed me to be the representative.
Right, so yeah.
Okay, so the letter should go to the city council for me, because I've been delinquent.
I mean,
on
maybe,
attending
but I
meetings.
mean, I don't
No,
know.
but what you do is
what I
you
do
call
just
that
wanna-
city council person and say, listen, your appointee isn't showing up. Is there somebody else you wanna put on?
Yeah, but I just think that's an important.
Well,
No, I get the distinction, but at the same time, I do feel very strongly, because I remember but we had board members that didn't show up, and it really, because you're only, 9 members, it really does mess with quorum if people don't show up, and because sometimes people are legitimately sick or have work. But if you got somebody who's just not showing up because they're just not showing up and they never call and you don't know why, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, no, we understand the sentiment, I just don't know if it can be exactly mirrored, maybe just some different
But that's good.
But
language
the
from
same,
the
the intent is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, why don't I think that clearly represents the intent of the committee.
Right.
Why don't we research that?
Yeah, just figure out how to.
Yeah, and maybe
Yeah.
because they're appointed,
well,
there
you
might be.
would notify council, I guess, in the same manner. If, for example, a commissioner resigned from the commission for whatever reason, the council would need to be informed, I take it, that there's a vacancy because this commissioner
Yes.
is gone.
But the resignation would be at the behest of the individual.
Correct.
Whether the
But-
removal privilege may not rest with the commission. I can see.
Right.
I mean, there's a question about that. I mean, who knows?
What I mean is, if the commission decides to take somebody off the commission, then it's like declaring a vacancy.
Correct.
So if a vacancy is declared, and that
should be communicated to the council, then it becomes their responsibility to.
No, we
Replace-
get that, we just
Right.
don't know if there's a privilege of the commission.
Right.
Maybe we have to.
That's Tom, real quick, do you wanna?
Yeah, thanks. I very much appreciate the sentiment expressed, and mirroring that point of if there are three absences, et cetera, et cetera. That's the real key on the communication. The strong advice by Corporation Counsel when we were doing the present plan was exactly that distinction that unless there was something in the charter for other means of removal, then the bottom line is you guys can do whatever you want to complain about absences or whatever, but the only thing that can really happen is if the mayor or the council chair really kind of picks up the phone and says, if you can't meet your obligations, then I can ask you to resign or whatever. The commission itself cannot remove or it cannot remove a fellow commissioner. But you can communicate that problem of we've had 9 absences, whatever. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So, but if you add the additional things, personally, we argued for that years ago. I appreciate the sentiment because that element of communication really is necessary, and
So
that's a
maybe
good
we'll-
idea.
Maybe what we could do is suggest that at that third trigger point, that we, with our discretion, of course, we could say not do it, but maybe consult the appointing entity, be that the mayor, be it the council.
Just CC.
And contact them and say, yeah, this commissioner is not fulfilling his or her responsibilities. But,
Yeah,
I mean, maybe we should have more.
I agree with that, but to have something in there,
Oh, yeah.
that route's fine.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's the best we're gonna get. So I have to be wordsmithed a little bit, so we will have to go and come back to it, but maybe if the committee, has the sense of, yeah, it'll say something like, if you miss 3 meetings at the discretion of the NCO, we will write to the
Whoever
appointing
appointed you.
entities,
Right.
expressing our concern with your absences, or,
Wouldn't you want the commission to have the discretion to decide whether they want that letter sent or not?
well, yeah, I
Yeah,
said,
I think it's-
with, just like the boards.
Yeah.
So you have the 3 meetings, but you can miss. So at the discretion of the commission. we
Whether a
send
letter
meeting.
is sent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we just have 2 hands raised on mine.
Oh, so what I would say is, that'll have to be wordsmith, so we'll have to, just approve the language, but I think that's obviously the sentiment of the committee. Who wants to?
Kevin first.
Kevin, go ahead. Can you,
Thank you, Chair.
can you introduce yourself just one time, at least, because I think I missed that the first time.
Thank you, Chair. This is Kevin Lai, member of Board 13, but speaking as an individual this evening. The sentiments of the testimony I submitted for this particular section really were on the lines of, if there's no consequence, then take it out. It's trying to streamline things. So I do appreciate the discussion that's entailed here. And I hope that we can find, that matching or analogous text that could keep the commission and the boards in sync. I think that really helps with cohesiveness. I would ask of Commissioner Verrey if he was able to make use of the record of attendance of all commissioners. That should be somewhere. I don't know where to find it, but did you have access to that, or did you have to do a line-by-line review of prior meeting minutes?
Sure, to answer that.
Yes.
Yeah, I just went through all the commissioners' minutes for the last 2 years and compiled, just so I could take a quick look. I knew there was one individual that I haven't even met yet, so that was the one I was concerned about the most. But as a board chair, I was concerned about the continued absence of the chair of the commission, and it started to be questionable to me. And that's why this particular item right here, I'm sure that many board chairs have had concerns over it. Out of all this, everything you have on the list, I think is the number 1 issue.
Okay. Kevin, I would say, though, that for future reference, that's kind of an administrative question. But why don't we talk about just proposals to make changes? But I understand that's an interesting question, so thank you. We had another.
Yeah, Robert Finney.
Bob, please go ahead.
Good morning or afternoon, Bob Finley. I have to agree with Tom Heinrich. When we were reviewing the plan in the past, our corporation council came down on us pretty hard about removing a commissioner, and for all the reasons that Tom came up with. So I just like to support his statement on that.
Okay, thank you. I think we've concluded this, so we will move on to 302, resignation. Are there any comments, any questions or concerns from the committee?
Chair, I just wanted to ask, you did it
Yes, sir.
last time, you wanted public before committee, I don't know if that helps you today.
Yeah, we were actually the plan every time is sort of reduce the public input, but I guess we can't. Let's have the public. Are there anyone want to provide input regarding this provision? Tom?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say real quick, this was added from a couple of war stories, which ultimately required the mayor to step in. And so we wanted to be clear in the rules of the commission that the commissioner could resign. That's stated conditionally, but it needed to be communicated. And if they didn't communicate that, because of a war story where that person refused to communicate it and ultimately was removed from the mayor. But it took months and months, bizarre thing. So in that regard, it seems unnecessary in some respects. In a better world it would be, but it is part of the rules of the commission at this point and just helps.
Thank you. Yes.
I got Kevin Lai.
All right, Kevin, go ahead.
Chair, thank you. And I hope that this doesn't fall under the proviso of technical administrative, but to clarify what's in 302 now, is the case that the resignation does not come into effect until the third of the three listed recipients have received the resignation and acknowledged it. It comes to play just because of some edge cases that might happen where someone might not want to choose to resign, or the commission rather, may want to have someone resign, but they don't resign in a timely fashion, which could have downstream consequences. Perhaps you or even Mr. Heinrich could explain how that should be interpreted. Thank you.
I'm not really following you. If you're talking about, does it have to be, is it not effective until it reaches all three of the entities? It does say and, so that's how I would read it. As far as forcing someone to resign, I'm not sure that, based on our previous discussion, I'm not sure we could do that. So I'm not really sure what you, yes, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I would say when a commissioner wants to resign, he's going to send that letter directly to the chair, and that commissioner will state there that I have to resign with a specific date.
Yeah, and I would think the chair could forward it on. I mean, there doesn't say it has to come from the individual resigning. It's just those three parties get the notification, so to speak.
I don't think we need to complicate this.
Yeah.
I sorry, Kevin, and I did print out earlier comments, and they're a little hard to read in small print, but we
Yeah,
are
Kevin.
reading them.
Yeah.
I feel that I don't think we need to complicate this. When I've resigned from something, I usually say effective immediately, send it in. When board members have resigned from our board, it's been effective immediately, and I send it on to Lloyd or Dylan or whomever. So from my perspective, I think the way this is written is fine, as long as somebody, if you're gonna resign from something, you're resigning.
Yeah.
You don't care who tells you what or who accepts it. As long as you send it in your mind, you're done.
Okay. So are there any suggestions we make any modifications? I'm hearing none.
I think this is fine the way
Okay.
it is.
I think so. Next up, we have meetings, 303. Does anyone from the public wish to opine on this? Okay, hearing none. I see Kevin. Kevin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the main suggestion I'd had here was regarding the ability of the commission to call a special meeting. And if that requirement still maintains a full majority of a quorum, or if a lesser number of commissioners could determine or feel that a special meeting for a specific reason would be necessary. And just to clarify, the suggested text I had for 303 Part C really implies or suggests that, yes, a minority of commissioners, for example, would be able to request a special meeting, but it would still take a full quorum to instigate or start or convene that meeting. I don't know if that's been in the past. It's a similar language that I've seen in other deliberative bodies. I don't know if there's ever been a situation where, a minority might want to bring something to the attention of the rest of the commission. And other than that, I just wondered if, for example, in Part A, if the commission doesn't meet more than 6 of the 12 months, is there any consequence to that, truly? Thank you.
I don't think that we need to put in, I shouldn't say me, I guess, if the committee wants to put in something that says that we must do it, but usually that sort of defines the administrative board. It just says you must do this, and if you don't do it, I suppose someone in the administration will let you know. I don't really know if it's necessary we put any consequence for not doing it, because that's our basic responsibility. As far as the special meetings, well, anytime you have action, so when it says by the commission, you have to have action. You have to have grounds for action by the committee, not grounds, but you have to have the authority, which would mean a majority of the commissioners. So that kind of by definition, I don't think you need to really elaborate. And I don't know, your suggestion of having possibly 1/3 do that, I'm not really sure.
Because even at board meetings, the chair calls special meetings. I can call a special meeting if I want. I don't need the permission of the board or even a potential of the board. So I think if the chair wants to call a meeting for a specific reason or reasons, I don't know that it needs to. Kevin, I appreciate what you're saying here. I don't know that we need all this additional language, because to my knowledge, there's never been an issue, and I think this operates the same way a regular board operates. The chair wants to call a meeting, the chair calls a special meeting.
I was trying to protect against the interest of the minority that might want to chair a meeting or call a meeting when the chair, him or herself, might not want to. That was just what I was trying to protect against.
Oh, I totally appreciate that. Totally appreciate that. But a good chair would I think listen to their board or to their commission. Yeah. But I appreciate exactly what you're saying. I see Commissioner Mellen showed up.
Yeah, I want to thank you. So okay, Tom, go ahead, please.
Just real quick, thank you, Chair. First, I do want to note the difference of subsection A, because the commission needs to meet in at least 6 months. Nothing else is said like the boards in terms of, no more than 2 months shall elapse, that kind of stuff. So if you wanted to end up taking 4 months off in a row, that's the prerogative of the commission, you have that. The second comment, and last one on this one, is just, again, this is one of those sections where it's a summary, if you will, and there's a lot of overlap with HRS Chapter 92, and we simply need to review or make sure that we have the review of the current status of Chapter 92 and how that reflects here. But what's already been said about special meetings or whatever, that's a lot more elucidated in Chapter 92. And so this is just reflecting, you can do that.
Okay, thank you. I would say for subsection E, where it says, may be recorded by any person in attendance by means of a tape recorder or any other means of sonic reproduction. Kevin did suggest deleting means of a tape recorder or kind of other, and he just put audio-visual reproduction, and I thought,
I think that's a really good change. I like that. Yeah,
okay.
That's excellent.
So,
And that's one to check Chapter 92. because that
Oh,
was the
just-
old language, which may have been updated in the statute.
Okay,
Which
so,
I think they have. I think they've changed that language
I
to
believe
something
so.
like audiovisual.
I think Kevin's change is spot on,
okay,
yes.
so, well, I guess, we will say, if we're allowed by statute, then we will change the language. Just delete, by means of tape recorder or other sonic reproduction, just say by means of audiovisual, what is it, reproduction.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's it for 303. Next we'll go up to 304.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, thank you for attending, no worries. We did a few
Just
minutes
got
ago.
off the freeway.
Yeah, we acknowledged that you showed up, so thank you.
Thank you.
So 304 is just executive meeting. Do we have any comments or? Okay. So hearing none, we can move up to 305.
Oh, I'm sorry. Quick comment on the executive meetings, not as to the,
Okay, does this mean you want to make a change? Are you suggesting a change or anything? If it's just kind of observation,
no,
let's.
side comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm very pleased to report that I got a call this afternoon from a buddy of mine who found the old electronic documents that we had used in leading up to 2008. The point on that is this is one of the few places where in the language of the section you have a specific reference to HRS in the section. And Chair, what you and I had talked about outside of this meeting earlier, not today, was how much of the authority information had been squeezed out of the sponge inappropriately, in my strong view, by Corporation Counsel, so that in the final notes about legislative history and authority for doing whatever it said, I think, I haven't looked at them, I just got that call today, but hopefully, fingers crossed, that original information to fill or to review again for those notes may be at hand. So I just want to throw that there because there had been a lot taken out inappropriately by Corp Counsel.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, Corp Counsel kind of drives the bus. I mean, the mayor makes the approval, but so if they did it inappropriately, so to speak, I mean, so be it. So move on from 304. We'll go to 305. Meeting notice and agenda. Do I hear a member of the public? Yes, I assume Kevin.
Thank you, Chair, for the ability to comment on 305 Part B. I think this raises the question that I was referring to earlier. Is in the presence of a chair who might not want to be asked to resign from the officer of chair, how could such an item be placed on the agenda of a meeting if the chair controls the agenda but does not want to have that on the agenda? I think this is kind of the philosophical discussion that I hope that the board, the committee can entertain. I detailed the ideas behind this in some of the sidebar comments. I don't want to trouble the committee to read them all, but I hope that there can be some discussion of how this could actually happen based on how this section and a downstream section regarding officers actually meld or merge together. Secondly, was a comment about if there is always going to be a specific named online calendar, perhaps operated by the commission office, which would supplant what the city clerk uses. Again, that's probably more of a functional, logistical, administrative issue, as you advised earlier, Chair. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other?
I think,
Go ahead,
I think that this section just needs a general review anyway, because I do think that, mainly just for this section B, because I do think that there's been updated language, especially when it goes to the public inspection and that type of stuff. And posted at the site of the meeting. I think that type of language has been maybe altered a little bit, I think. With like basically for other types of agendas and stuff like that, like at the city council board, which I think probably the same type of language, especially, well, they're following the sunshine law, and I think the sunshine law may have made a couple of modifications. So it's something I just want to at least look at and just see if it all lines up still.
Okay, so with the agreement of the committee, we're kind of hold that as a reserved issue based upon what Dylan.
Because just to touch on,
finds out.
this is what we get into, where when we're transposing their stuff onto our, this document here, then if they change over there, something we have to change over there.
Just needs to be consistent, yeah, I hear you. On the comment that Kevin made about opting into mail to say post, which I totally appreciate. However, I think it may still be required. So believe me, I would love to get rid of mailing stuff, but we still run into the problem where people want stuff, hard copies of by mail. So I think, could you check on that one as well too, to make sure, again, we're being consistent?
Yes, as far as I'm aware, we're still legally obligated to send out postal.
That's what I thought, yeah.
It's requested.
Yeah.
I don't think that's changed, but we can look into it.
Yeah, because I'm with Kevin, I'd love to opt in, but may not be able to.
Okay.
So I think, Chair, if you don't mind, we just reserve this section to be looked at and make sure it's in accordance with the current practices.
Okay, so Dylan, would you mind reporting back to the committee
Yeah.
about this section? So we'll reserve judgment on that. I mean, are there any other points on this particular section so that we can have it ready when they come back? All right, Tom, go ahead.
Just quick, I appreciate Kevin's comment about what if you have a chair who is absolutely refusing to put an item on the agenda? You can consider taking a look at the little process that we did write in the neighborhood board context, so that, there's a bit of a delay, but the bottom line is the wishes of the board can be better considered compared to,
I think to save time, I think wherever the commission, we would always want to make sure that within reason it mirrors what the boards are also doing.
It helps.
So I'm just gonna put that out there for the moving forward. Sorry, Tom.
So that's great. I
Well, then
appreciate that.
probably would have to make that, I guess we make that maybe subsection D of 305, because it's meeting an agenda.
Tom, just to clarify, that's in reference to the board member being able to request to the chair to put something on the agenda.
To put the vote on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To actually put it on the agenda for our following meeting. So maybe if we created subsection D, that would be the easiest, right? Wouldn't you think? Or if you want to think about it and make a proposal to us.
That would probably be the easiest.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
So we'll receive a report back next month or next meeting. Thank you. So next up is 306, priority of business. Kevin, I see Kevin and I had a question about does it mean an agenda may be reordered by a simple majority and of the committee? I would think so. Yeah, someone on the committee. Well, no, that may be a readjustment of the agenda, which would probably require 2/3. I think based on Robert's rules.
Well, you can take things out of order by simple consensus if the commissioners want it, but I would never recommend that you just do. I would think the board or the commission, same as the board, wants to take care of public concerns quickly and get that out of the way. And usually when you take things out of order, it's because of something very pressing, say you're gonna lose quorum and you have to vote on something. And that to me would be the only time you would take it out, but that would not ever negate or remove public comments. But for example, Richard has to leave, and if he leaves, that means you can't vote on anything. So you move that up, get your vote out of the way, then you go back to the order of agenda, which then you take up residents' concerns or community concerns. So I would say it doesn't negate any of that, Kevin. It would still, you can take it out of order, but you should still then go back and follow the agenda.
So are there any desire for anybody to make any changes or modifications to this provision?
Not at this time.
Okay,
Sure.
Yes.
Can I?
Kevin, go.
Kevin, can you hear us? I just got from Commissioner Melendez. He said the sound was a little choppy.
Oh,
I've had fine audio, Dylan.
Okay, thank you. And then he did have his hand raised. I don't know if that.
okay. So, well, I guess Kevin, who had there?
Kevin.
Kevin, did you want to add something real quick, please?
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the prior comments. I guess I was trying to protect against the public who may view a posted agenda, which maybe say has 3 items, each of which are very important. If the commission then decides to reorder any of those items, designated a special item of business, but someone had planned to attend a commission meeting and they assumed, perhaps too presumptively so, that the discussion of that item would come at a later time in the meeting. So maybe they were coming off from work and could only arrive to the commission meeting later on in the course of the meeting. If that item was reordered, per the comments before, would a period to receive public comments about that item still be made available to members of the public who had intended to appear at the meeting to provide testimony at a later time? And of course, if an action has already been taken on the item, then I'm not sure how that would be resolved. Again, I'm just trying to think of how to protect the interests of the public who would view a posted agenda online. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What I would say is, like Kathleen suggested, I think it's special circumstances usually are the reason behind these, and it's sort of one of those things. If you want to participate in the meeting, you got to come to the whole meeting. I mean, I understand, and I have that. I mean, I'm sure we've had that experience with people coming late, but I'm sorry. If our designated time is X, then you got to come at that to catch something.
And in all fairness, the chair's running that meeting, the chair's gonna make the right decision and make a fair decision.
Okay.
Generally, it has not been an issue. I think that's more true in a neighborhood board meeting than in a commission meeting.
Right.
Okay,
But
That's
we'll
right.
take-
thank you. Stephen, did you want to add anything else, or?
No.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we have. That was 06, 307, the meeting minutes.
Just as a initial jumping off point, this section has completely changed from what is currently allowed under Sunshine Law.
So do you think he should come back to us with an update?
Well, so there's two minds that we have. The easy way would just be to take the current language and just plop it into here and just replace it, you know? The second way of thinking is coming up with some kind of catch-all language that preserves this in perpetuity, so that way it doesn't have to be looked at again. Because we're already running into the issue where, well, this has significantly changed, this is completely out of date with what's currently the Sunshine Law requirement for meeting minutes. Now, the commission can put in the new section that allows for things like the video recordings with the timestamped agenda or minutes, and that none of that is explained in here. So that can be dropped in. However, the next time down the line where OIP and Sunshine Law decides to change and add something else, well, then that would just make this section completely defunct again. So how to come up with something that would remain in
Is that
perpetuity.
something you guys wanna, like we did with the other section, Chair, have them come back with a proposal?
I mean, I kind of think Section A, regardless of what's required by the Sunshine Law and I don't think they would pull it back too much. I mean, this seems to be pretty basic, because even like number 4, where it says the substance of matters, it's the substance of the actual matter itself. It's not the discussion, not the actual discussion. So just a very bare bones summary is probably a good practice. I'm sorry, Lloyd, did you want to add something?
Yeah, and again, I'm not an attorney, so maybe my view is a little different, but we could drop in the current wording for minutes according to the latest version of the Sunshine Law. And could we add a line that says, or as whatever the current law reads. I mean, I don't know, again, I'm not an attorney, that's just my practical brain saying, well, this is what it is now, but.
Can
you
we
know,
just put in general language that says that
Yeah, I think
we will abide by, you know, whatever the,
whatever the sunshine law
yeah, the
is.
sunshine law, you cite the reference to the
Well,
sunshine
so
law.
yeah, but
It won't be
okay.
inconsistent with it, or that kind of language.
But let me just say that, okay, the sunshine law creates a minimum. It means we can go beyond that. So that's why I'm saying that this will probably never, I mean, they're not gonna say, I mean, obviously, they're never gonna say you can't do something. So I think, I mean, do you have, if the sunshine law tomorrow came out and was amended and said you didn't have to put in the substance of all matters proposed, discussed, or decided, would you take that out? I mean, would you just want to say, okay, here's the video recording and that's it?
I think for us, it's just in order to just like make sure that all available options are there, the best thing to do is, well, the current law is the current law, and then you just go with
Well, but that means,
the current law.
but what I'm saying is, I'm not sure if the current law said, hey, a video recording is enough. You just point them to the video.
It does.
Okay, but I mean, are you telling me that really you think that you want to get rid of this requirement?
No,
I think that's why
the
we do
current
a
one
little more.
expands upon.
Oh, it
It-
expands.
It allows for this section,
Yeah.
the date, time, all substance proposed, blah, 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 and then it also says, or if you want to do the video summary, timestamp, whatever with.
With a
minutes.
summary.
Right, well,
Yeah, it allows for everything.
okay.
I
Yeah, okay, maybe I'm not following correct. Because even if you do the timestamp, you still have to say the substance to be able to point it to the correct time, you know what I'm saying? That we discussed, you know, provision
Yes.
307, and that's at, 55 minutes, 42 seconds or something of the
Right.
meeting. Right? So I don't see how we're not gonna fit these requirements, how we're gonna not have to do this anyway. So in other words, why would you wanna take these out?
It's not about taking it out, it's about adding, because right now, as it says, the current law expands upon, you can use a video and you can do timestamps. This does not say that. This says you must write, basically like how we used to do the old style minutes, which was 8, 9, 10 pages of minutes.
I don't see that it says that. Is this a substance of matters discussed? It doesn't say the matter, the actual discussion. Yes, Dylan?
That exact item is the one that's not included in the additional language that has been updated, because that is included in the video. But what you just mentioned would be required to be recorded in writing. So the video has everything that's discussed, just like right now, we're having a dialogue. So all we're saying is in the current section of Sunshine Law, it adds a very brief paragraph that says, or you could do it this way, which is a video, and that video must be accompanied by a document that only has 4 requirements, and that's date, time, and place, attendance, timestamps of every item when it's brought up, and then the last one is motions.
Okay.
They focus on action taken and timestamps for that as well. That's it. It does not include number 4, the substance of all matters proposed, discussed. And we found a balance for both.
Right.
Okay, well, let's hear from some committee members. I see Stevens had his hand raised. Steven?
Thank you. Appreciate the discussion. I generate legal documents pretty much every day for the AG and all that for budget and finance. And when I've gone into reviewing documents, including the commission documents, the neighborhood board documents, legally, I go back to the statement that Mr. Lai said earlier, in order to protect the public, and to the opening paragraph of that section. Let me go to that right now. It talks about a true reflection. So we do need to have, a court's not going to say, let's go through the video. They're not going to do that. The written record is legal tender. And just whatever we put has to have a true reflection of the occurrences at the meeting. I've gone back myself 1.5 years through board minutes to respond back to a legal adjudication. And we have to, like Mr. Lai said, we do need to protect the public. As long as we have a true reflection, we're fine. If not, then we don't. So if we could use that opening statement as common sense, and then build everything else around that, that's my suggestion.
Okay, I have a response, but, well, I would just say, true reflection is a very
Right.
ambiguous term.
Yeah.
It doesn't say true detailed reflection, so I don't know, that would be my thought. Larry?
I just want to say that this is a very contentious issue. I know we're talking about the commission, but when you get to neighborhood boards, you're gonna see a lot more people that are gonna be attending. The key in this thing is, I personally believe, for when it comes to the minutes and stuff, if you have some very important issues that were discussed, there should be a summary, or just a basic written summary, and then if you want those details, you go to the video. But you gotta have that, because you don't know, just with one line item, well, how much time are you gonna waste looking through videos, trying to figure out what you're looking for? At least it points you to the right section, says,
Right.
this is what I'm gonna tackle.
But the video should be indexed, and
Yeah,
it
that'd be
should, and
fine.
what we do at Board of Water Supply, we have minutes, we have an indexed video, and we also do a transcript. And we don't put the transcript up there, but we put the minutes and we make the videos available. For our neighborhood board, the first place I go is the video, because the video will absolutely give me the truest reflection of the discussion at the board meeting, because the best minutes, unless you literally transcribe them word for word, is never going to give you, because you miss body language. So to me, true reflection means you go to the video, because then you will see when somebody was doing this.
So for your transcript, we're using AI?
Yeah, and then
Same
we
guy
actually,
do
we go to, we use Sonics, and then our board secretary for BWS actually then goes back and makes corrections, because I'm sorry, it's never as good as the real thing. But we always recommend people, and when I have somebody that comes and says to our neighborhood board meeting, I say, go back to the video. Not one of my board members would ever rely on the minutes. They would all go to the video, because every single one wants to make sure they actually heard what they heard. And so we just use the video. But I think a summary is not a bad thing. But, you know, other than that, you have transcript, you have minutes, and you have video. So you have 3 ways of getting what is a true reflection of the meeting, one way or the other. So I think what we need here is a good recommendation from you guys.
I guess for us, this is the one weird section where I thought, like, okay, this is kind of it's what the law says. So, like, I mean, historically we've always had basically, this is word for word what the law has been, and now it's like, well, you just update it with what the law currently says, and it seems like there's or you
Well,
for this.
see, we've got the language for what the written record and minutes should include. The backup, if anybody wants to check the written record, you just go to the video, but that's up to the person checking. We've got enough evidence and documentation of what transpired at the meeting, so, you know, it's someone's choice if they don't trust what's the written minutes.
Okay, well, why don't I suggest that maybe we can look at what the law actually requires, and then.
Yeah, so basically, because I looked at
Well,
this a
you just
million
stated
times.
that, right?
Yeah, well, so
I got it verbatim.
Well, so the big difference is that so they classify between written minutes and recorded minutes. And the idea is that if you're doing written minutes, and that's the only available record is what has been written down, then of course you should be more detailed, because it's the only record of what's available. So they break it down as what this says: time, date, and place of the meeting, record of the board members there, the substance of the matters proposed, discussed, decided, and a record of the vote. And then, of course, if an electronic or audio-video recording is made, then a link to that is good. But then further it says, any other information that any member of the board requests to be included or reflected. And that's always been kind of a weird one too, because if a board member says, hey, I want 30 pages of a document in the minutes, well, this says, put it in there basically.
Well, before
now-
we go in a deep dive, why don't we reserve judgment on section A, and that way we can kind of come back with a solid proposal
So-
with this other one.
So just the second part of that really quickly is the new law updates, which is saying, so the written minutes, which is very detailed because that's the only record, or recorded minutes. And what they include is the time, date, and place of the meeting, the members recorded as either being present or absent, and the time they come in and leave, a record of the motions made by the board, and a timestamp indicating when things happen.
Okay, so we can, if anyone wants to add anything, or we can follow essentially base our proposed section based upon the current law. Is that fine? And we'll just come back to it the next meeting.
Yeah.
Dylan?
3 online. Based on what you just said, maybe they can keep it brief, but they did have their hand raised for a moment.
Okay, who's the first person?
We'll go Kevin.
Kevin, briefly, please. This is about 307A. Kevin? You're muted, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Keeping it to subsection A, of course, the sentiment in the community has been strong about the written record, video summary. And so I hope that we can find a way to resolve that. That will satisfy the members of the community. Within the subsections of A, I think I had added a request to see if we could include the resolve clauses of any adopted resolution so that in these minimalized written records, people will be able to know what was adopted, because otherwise it's really opaque to the community. And it'd be nice to know at a glance at that minimalist summary what actually was decided or adopted by the commission. I think that would serve the public well.
That's
Maybe,
Good idea.
yeah, that should happen. Maybe I made a mistake and I said we should not actually have comments on section A because we're going to revisit this section. So sorry that for the other people contributing, wanting to be heard. I apologize for that. But as we are going to come back to it, if your comments concern section A, I would ask that you either submit testimony for our next meeting, or you wait to publicly testify about that when we actually go back and consider it. Thank you. With that said, with no further comments on A from our committee members, we can move on to the rest of the provision. Are there any other comments about section B, C, or D? Or that's it?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
There are others who are waiting to comment on this.
Okay, please go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I think what this committee is ignoring, as coached by the NCO, and I don't understand why the NCO is coaching the committee. The commission should have full jurisdiction. The NCO serves the commission and serves the neighborhood boards. That said, you need to look at not only section A and the subsection, the subservient section B, which is an add-on for recordings that are made prior to minutes being written that are allowed with summaries. You need to go to HRS 92-3.7, which clarifies the process. You have totally ignored that because 3.7 shows that you may post the recordings and the summaries, but once the complete minutes, including comments, questions, concerns, and answers, are completed, which has not been done by the NCO, once the minutes are posted, the complete minutes under section A, then the recordings and summaries subvert to secondary items, which may or may not be posted, but it's recommended that the recordings be posted so people can refer to the recordings, as our esteemed commission member Kathleen has noted, are important for people to refer to get the truth out of these meetings, not just some arbitrarily summarized renditions without any questions, answers, concerns, or comments, which are very important to the public. And yet the Neighborhood Commission Office has deleted all of these from the summaries. So nobody knows what the public is concerned about, only what is presented by the departments. This is ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have,
Yeah, last one, Greg Masaki.
Greg, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to point out there was a very well-written document by OIP. It's dated August 2023, and it may actually be possibly what Dylan Witzel was reading from. But the title of it, and I can forward this to the NCO office, Quick Review, Sunshine Law Requirements for Public Meeting Minutes. It's 4 pages long, and there's a section that specifically is where everybody gets tripped up a little bit that talks about the written summary. So it's a very good document. I can forward that on to the office. So I could forward it right now. I think if you guys have access, and I'll do that when I get off.
I think it's NB testimony at NCO at
Honolulu.gov.
Honolulu.
Yeah,
it's on the bottom of the
I
form.
tried
Yes,
that
if
before. You guys
forward
didn't
that.
receive it. I have the email address. I'll send it along. And I didn't introduce myself. You guys all know who I am, but Greg Masakian, Waikiki Neighborhood Board Number 9,
Yeah,
and I'm
you're right.
also
I forgot
speaking.
to say that. Thank you. Thank you very much for adding that.
Also speaking as an individual, but I'll let you guys get back to the meeting, but I will forward that right now as you continue.
Thank you. Dylan.
Just really quickly, I just wanted to, and this is for anyone to access, this is on OIP's website under their training section, but this is the latest Sunshine Law guidance for neighborhood boards, and it's from late 2024. Page 47 of the document that they provided, they actually, in plain English, clarified this actual section. So this is coming from OIP themselves. And it says, is the board required to keep minutes of its meetings? Yes, boards must either keep written minutes or recorded minutes with a written summary. And it outlines if a board chooses to keep written minutes, these are the requirements, which is currently the 4 that's in the neighborhood plan. But it says further, but a board may choose to keep a recording of its entire meeting with a written summary instead of doing written minutes. And then it provides the requirements that are different. So in their own plain language, on their document, on OIP's website, they've opined on this specifically because they understand that numerous people have brought this concern. Now, whether or not what is done with that information, but just to kind of clarify that issue, I mean, they themselves, it's coming from them saying that these are different things.
Thank you. Now, we will revisit this, so
Reserved to
we're going to reserve on section A of 307. Thank you. So,
Mr.
hopefully-
Chair, the OIP is ignoring section 3.7 of chapter 92.
Well, they provide the guidance, so what can we do? You have to take it up with them. So with that said, let's
Perhaps
move
the
on.
Ethics
to-
Commission.
Please wait till you, I'm sorry, please wait till you're recognized by the chair. Thank you. We're going to move on to section B, or section B, C, and D. Does the public wish to add anything for those particular sections?
Kevin Lyons.
Kevin, please go ahead.
Chair, thank you. My comments serve as a plea to, as was mentioned before, maybe go above and beyond what the minimum requirements are, or maximum, however we interpret that. But I think the public has been clamoring for some form of an indexable, searchable version of the written record, whether that's going to be to whatever degree. If it's just the written record that we have now, at least make it accessible, indexable, so that on the Neighborhood Commission Office website, one can search for the appropriate strings and find the set of written records that will comport with that to allow for research. As you'll see in the testimony I submitted, I requested adding a subsection C to follow current subsection B, which would make a reference to the automated transcription process, as was relayed by Ms. Paunui earlier. I think this is a chance for the commission and its proxy, the commission office, to begin to adopt some technology that will permit that. In the absence of formal, long-form written minutes, let's find a way where the equivalent of that can be made available to the public. It could be a transcription. It doesn't necessarily need to be curated to the degree to make it absolutely perfect. If those certain provisos are provided, for legal language that we can secure, I think that would be so helpful for the commission and show a goodwill towards the public. My question about current section C, absent the request of addition of subsection C, regarding if there is not a quorum, just to clarify, what else can happen? Can the commission still receive testimony and just document that, but certainly not vote on anything such as that? And I'll yield back to the chair. Thank you.
My understanding is the commission can take testimony, but it just can't take any action. So I guess the commission can defer the issue or decide to take the testimony. I think that's up to the commission at that date and time to do as it will. Are there any other public comments regarding these sections? All right, hearing none, we'll move to our committee members. I would say an indexable search feature. Yes, that'd be great, but that's sort of probably, we're getting, the technology is getting there, but at this point to require it is probably too early, I would think. Lloyd, you can certainly.
Well, we would like to get all kinds of stuff
Well,
that doesn't
let me-
exist right now.
Let me offer this, Lloyd, and guys, why don't you give me a call, let me talk and see what our team does, because we do a lot of that, and I can't swear to the indexable thing, but let me see what we do at Board of Water Supply and see what it takes, because we don't, as far as I know, spend any kind of real money on stuff either, because we're poor too, and we spend money on pipelines. So I'm happy to sit down and have a conversation with you guys and see what we do. But I'm with a chair that I don't know. I think we got to be careful when we use language like require.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's a big goal that we want to achieve and get to. I don't know that, and when you guys have a different budgeting process than we do, so I don't want to put a requirement into something you guys may not be able to achieve. But I think having that goal is really important. But it may be fairly easy to get there too. I don't know, so let's have a conversation.
Yeah, to just, I think to get to Kathleen's point, I think it's a great goal, but at this point to mandate it is probably unrealistic as a requirement. But yeah, I think that's a terrific goal, and so I think that's a good suggestion and something for the NCO to work towards. Dylan.
Since we're on the topic, I just wanted to note that we have worked with some AI already. It was not perfect. It was interesting, but it didn't work for the meetings that we're currently running. We are looking at additional programs.
Yeah.
So we're always open to it. And I wanted to note that we mentioned, as Kathleen mentioned, having the video available, the written summary, and a transcript. Currently, our YouTube video does have the transcript feature, and it follows along previous, during, and future. So it's very helpful. I'm actually going to make a video, and we'll put that on our website as not so much a training, but just additional tutorial for people to use Google Drive and YouTube.
Yeah, we are constantly looking for an AI program we can use. And we tried one a year and a half
Tried
ago.
to, yeah.
Several, yeah. And it was okay. The problem with AI is that while we want to use it, it ends up costing us more time. Yeah, and that was the challenge. Yeah, but it's getting better. And,
I do
and that's
have to
good.
say, because I was the one that we do use it for captions, because we obviously have to caption all our videos, right? And so we use it for captions, and we know we struggle because it doesn't understand the Hawaiian language, and that's really where we run into problems. But I do have to say, if you assign somebody in your office to be kind of the champion of that kind of thing, you do get faster, and it does start getting better. But like I said, I'm happy to have that conversation with you guys to show you what we use.
Okay, so I think we're going outside the scope of this. These are great ideas and great suggestions moving forward, but I don't think that we have any real sense that we need to require it at this point in time, based on the current technology.
Right.
So do I have anything else? Is that encapsulated? Everybody fine with the current language of those B, C, and D?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on to 308, the quorum and majority vote. Sorry, I'm just looking. Do we have any public comments on those? Kevin, go ahead, please.
Chair, thank you. Regarding subsection C and similar concepts in the following main section 309, language says present at meeting. Is that now supplanted or covered by the latest HRS 92 language so that we don't need to specify anything about in-person through a virtual or other type of meeting?
I would
Thank
assume present
I would
means in any capacity in which you're allowed to attend, be it on the phone, by video, or in person. I mean, I can't say specifically if that's a language in the law, but especially considering they've updated the law for video to allow video conferencing, I can't imagine that doesn't reflect the current law. Okay, so do we have any other comments from the public? I'm sorry, Kevin, did I miss something? Did you say a note earlier? Was it just the
Chair. Yes, for this section, other than that, my only comments, I'll defer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure. No further comments from the public. So do any of the committee members?
No.
So we are good?
Yep.
Good with that?
Retain without modification.
So next up we have 309, which is the voting procedure. I did actually, when it comes to section A, or no, what is it, the recusal, I wondered how does that impact the vote total? And I actually went back to the charter, and all these cited provisions only deal with the executive of the administrative committees to do their functions. It doesn't have anything to do with voting and such directly. So, I mean, maybe Tom, you probably know better than anybody, but if someone recuses themselves, does the total still require a majority of the of the actual commissioners that are in office, or
Yeah,
so you
unfortunately,
can't break that?
Unfortunately, all the variations you can think of, whether recusal or abstention or whatever,
Right.
it does not change the voting requirement of a majority of the members
Okay.
of the commission.
That's right.
So that's just, I think,
It's
so
tough.
if you recuse yourself, it's just no vote then. Okay, well, anyway, I guess it is what it is. Do we have, are there any public comments concerning this section? So Kevin, go ahead, please. Section 309.
Thank you, Chair. 309, subsection B. I think my question was if a commissioner may self-recuse but not disclose a specific reason, or is it absolutely must be compelled that a reason, as per section B. And then secondly, I believe there was a missing carriage return in the current subsection C, although there was some, or maybe it's just a technical edit there. And then lastly, for this section, is there any setting such as is analogous within the neighborhood boards where there is a type of vote where, for example, when appointing a new member of a board, there is one other type of vote rather where a name must be affirmatively stated. I don't know if that is ever the case within the commission itself and if that language should be modified. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm saying in the case of like an elected office or something like that, I would assume you're referring to.
Yeah, so
That's like a race vote.
to clarify what Kevin is saying is that if you look at the board section,
Right.
they have the same aye, nay, abstain, but then it specifically says, except when electing officers, you must state the name of the person. We actually kind of like the way that the commission has it here, yes, no abstain, because it confuses people so
Yes,
much.
I would actually like to, I don't know if we can.
So that may be appropriate later on to
Yes.
take a look at that in the board
Right.
section.
I agree.
But we actually think this language works better.
Yeah, as far as,
rather than adding.
to go back to your first point about stating the reason for recusal, I don't see why we have to require it, you know.
What do we do under the board section? Do we require a reason for recusal?
I don't think so, but there is language that maybe Kevin might also be familiar with, but there is like the difference between a recusal and a disclosure. I think that
Yeah, and
there's
that's
some issue in our
typically,
plan there that,
and
yeah,
I think the board can then choose, like if you state something, can the board?
it's complicated, but
Yeah.
but it's worth looking at specifically, you know, what a recusal entails.
If you recuse, you don't get to vote. If you disclose your conflict of interest,
Right.
you still get to vote and discuss.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just, then it's up to the board member how they want
And
to move
generally a
forward.
recusal, like, for example, when we did our rates in front of the neighborhood board, I recused myself because Board of Water Supply pays my check. So
Yeah.
I had a financial gain in getting more in the rate, so I
But it's
recused
just
myself.
strange that there's two different terminologies,
Yeah.
recusal and a declaration of conflict.
But in our agenda now, we are required to have the declaration of conflict, and so some board members will say, well, you know, I sit on the board of directors for this thing that's coming before us, but they still then participate in the discussion and vote, because there's no money. And I think for us, the higher standard is, are you getting paid? Is there money changing
Is there
hands?
financial?
Yeah.
Is there a financial gain? And I think that's what the statute says too, regarding recusal, if there's a financial
Or
gain there.
disclosure,
Yeah.
Okay.
the disclosure, because recusal is up to the individual.
Yeah, but the recusal, we take the higher standard is the recusal has a financial gain to it. And when you recuse and you don't even discuss it, no
Correct.
discussion,
That's correct.
no voting. But if you disclose a conflict of interest because you happen to sit on the board of directors for a foundation and the foundation is coming because they want support of a project, we'll still, you just say, hey, I sit on the board, but you can still participate in the discussion and the vote.
Okay, so the disclosure is required, it's mandatory. The recusal is discretionary. Does anyone wish to make a change?
See, I think the recusal should be mandatory, because if you're getting financial gain, now I can't imagine anything coming for you guys that would have financial gain, but it does on the board
It
level.
might be a loss.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that would probably be a matter of maybe the chair or the executive secretary, or someone just saying, hey, you know, I heard you disclose that, but you may want to consider that this may not be allowed, because that's a separate kind of.
Yeah, I
If that
agree with you
person
saying, I don't wanna
commits-
complicate anything.
Yeah, and I don't know that we need to put it in here, because if that person is required by law, you know, you may suggest that, like, hey,
Yeah.
I think, you know, you can't tell. Go ahead, Joe.
This might help, but not to jump. Letter C, or section C of 309, I'm sure Dylan can touch on this. This was also updated to reflect, I'll say hybrid meetings now. That's not the term they like to use. But when you have a virtual component, you can only vote two ways. It's unanimous or roll call. So yeah, that's a bit of news that was also recently updated. So based on that,
AIOIP?
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall something about that too.
yeah. So if that needed to be updated, I don't know if that leads this section to be reserved with judgment.
Okay, well, section C, I mean,
Come back to it.
I think essentially, even if the committee itself were to say, hey, we're okay with these sections, if the law says we can't do it, then we need to revisit it, regardless.
Well, it's the same
right? I mean,
situation
is that
with the
what
meeting
everybody
minutes.
agrees?
Yeah, that's why it's the same thing, because, yeah, Dylan's right. And
Okay,
now
so that is something we should look at, but that's what I would say is, if anything does violate, then we regardless of if we accepted it, we gotta go back and look at it.
Yeah, because then you just have to use the roll call or the other one that's permitted.
Okay, so, are there any desire to make any changes under 310? I don't hear any.
No.
Okay, so we will go to the order and decorum.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I'm just trying to keep track of this for the minutes. You just mentioned 310, but we were on 309.
Well, I thought we went back to 309. You went back and looked at.
Oh, I'm
was that-
sorry,
Or
did I
was
miss?
that my mistake?
Oh, I didn't write a timestamp for disclosure, so I thought we didn't actually move forward.
Well, we were talking about disclosure, so a few.
I was reading that as voting letter B. A commissioner may choose to be recused.
Oh,
Then I see how the whole new section
Right.
is
okay.
disclosed.
Was I
Down to-
was I operating
Okay.
under the wrong? I thought we moved it through 10.
It's okay, Chair.
Okay, well, we're sorting itself out, but that was my understanding, so, okay.
Is everyone on the same?
Yeah, are we all on the same page? So are we all done with your three?
So, what can I jot down for notes for 309? Is this a reserve?
If
Judgment?
required by current, if conflicts with current law, then we will reserve judgment.
Okay, thank you.
But I think if it doesn't, then we'll just leave it as is.
So the actual voting of like I may abstain, I don't think should be impacted. However, the method of voting
Right.
is what's impacted.
Yeah, and I think that's what Dylan suggested. So, and 310, we didn't want to make a change.
Okay, 310, no change.
So retain without modification.
Based on
Chair.
my understanding, I don't know if, Kevin, he did have his hand raised just now, which
Okay,
may be
Kevin,
on 310.
Okay, so 310, please. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding 310, I'm wondering if there is a means for if, once a disclosure is made by a commissioner and other commissioners think, well, maybe that truly warrants recusal of said commissioner, is there a means for that to happen? Could such a vote for that be called at the time of the discussion of the agenda item as it's under the auspices of anything having to do with discussion of votes on that agenda item? Is it the opinion of the committee here that that's something that would be permissible? Again,
I think
somebody just.
we did. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. We did actually address that. I think there was some confusion where we were at, but we did address that. And basically, Kathleen, tell me if I'm wrong, that it's sort of on the commissioner, him or herself, and someone else could say, hey, if you have a financial, reason you disclose something and you have a financial conflict, then maybe legally you might be required to abstain, to recuse yourself. But we're not going to force the issue as part of the commission itself. So the answer to your question is yes, we're going to leave that vague, or we're going to not leave that as a requirement.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And again, I note that the recusal shall be recorded per subsection B in 310, but not that the disclosure itself needs to be recorded, although it's, I believe in the previous section, noted that it should be disclosed and announced. I just don't know if they are analogous.
Well, it says a matter of public record, so I would assume that it would be in the minutes, or unless they submit it in other documentation, which would be incorporated by reference. So yeah, it would be in the minutes. So if you look at section A, it says the disclosure will be made as part of the public record. Okay?
Even in the written summary.
Well, this is part of the public record, so whatever requirement that would entail, I would assume it's in the written summary, but in theory, depending on how the recording law, the Sunshine Law operates, maybe it could be
Well,
just
you
in the
would
video
have
record.
to, because if you're making a motion and they don't vote, you have to disclose why they didn't vote. So I would think it's gotta be a matter of the public record. Every time we've done it for our board minutes, it always shows up, somebody abstained or recused themselves. It has to be a matter of public record because you're taking yourself out of the vote.
Right. Yeah, I would think it has to be pretty clear. So Dylan.
Yeah, just as someone that drafts minutes, totally agree. And even if we miss it, ultimately it's up to the commission with your minutes or the board with their minutes. Therefore, if you brought that to your board, if this was something in your case, Kevin, then it would be up to the board to decide if that should be included, if they thought it was important.
Generally speaking, I don't think there's a rule on it, but it's just a best practice because,
Yes.
for example, when someone leaves a meeting and suddenly your number goes from 9 to 8, and then there's a vote, well, there has to be an explanation of why now only 8 people are voting on it. So,
Exactly.
Okay.
so that's normally already included anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So hearing nothing further, we'll move on to section 311. Do we have any public testimony for that particular section?
Yes.
Okay, Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, I wonder if this is a chance for the commission to clarify in the neighbor plan if order and decorum applies to activities outside of the auspices of a meeting itself. And this has come up before in the complaint process, and I wonder if that's a fully adjudicated concept. Thank you.
I'd probably prefer to leave that vague, personally, but Lloyd, you want?
I agree.
Okay. Any objections or other comments? Anything further, Kevin?
Chair, only that it caused much consternation and consumption of time. That's why I raised the question of if activity of a commissioner outside of a meeting is felt to be non-decorous, if that is anything that would be worthy of concern. But I appreciate the comments about keeping it vague. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the thought is it's probably situational dependent. You know, I mean, if someone's acting really outside their capacity as commissioner and doing something they shouldn't, well, that's one thing. If they're obviously a commissioner, maybe do something that they're in that role outside of the meeting, maybe that's a little different, and it's a kind of a value situational judgment that you have to make on a case-by-case basis.
And the chair's got the meeting, chair's gonna take action on it.
Well, I think he's suggesting outside the meeting. So if a commissioner does something outside the meeting. Right, Kevin? That's what you're suggesting.
Would that come up in the complaint process?
That's
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah, I think that's
See, the
true.
problem is when, if it's out, well, go ahead, look.
No, but not necessarily for a commission, but for the boards, yes, the company process.
Well, or is Kevin talking about a scenario where a commissioner goes to a board meeting and then conduct is unbecoming?
Well, Kevin, do you want to just very briefly, what sort of scenario are you thinking of?
Well, I think the attempt would be to make an analogy to the complaint that occurred in a neighborhood board setting. But for example, if a commissioner wrote an email to someone that was found to be deleterious or intentionally disparaging, how would that be concerned or reviewed, I guess? Again, as a non-commissioner, not elected official or anything, I mean, I don't know what actually could happen to a commissioner if anything should come up in the first place. So it's just a concept, I guess.
The chair should take care of it.
Yeah, and I would think if they're acting in that capacity as a commissioner, even though it's outside like an email or something, then that would be under the purview of the whole commission. Hold on. Lloyd?
Well, at the same time, I think we should recognize that the commission itself comes under different rules than a neighborhood board member. And that is like, the ethics violation is applicable to commissioners, but not necessarily to neighborhood board members. But I understand your concern, because that thing is so general, the way it's worded on order and decorum, and you could theoretically say, I saw you shoplift somewhere, so I'm gonna file a complaint under our process for your shoplifting, which is, again, defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do.
I think leaving it as is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hear what Kevin's saying for sure.
Okay, so yeah, we hear your concern. Tom, did you want to add anything real briefly?
Yeah, just real quick, actually, I appreciate the discussion because remembering past research and everything else, the context for order and decorum is just like this. It is in the conduct of the meeting. It is not for anything else like an email or conduct outside of the meeting. So I think it's important concerns, but doesn't apply to the use of the terminology of order and decorum, by whether it's a board member or the commission, because it needs to be in the conduct of that particular meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. So I hear no change to this provision. So next up we have adjournment, that's 3:12. And Kevin, I see, we're just jumped to you. I see you had a number of comments. I'm not really clear, perhaps, if you want to let us know what your thinking is.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Again, the question I have is about when quorum is lost in subsection 4 of 312. It suggests that the meeting is adjourned. What if the quorum is lost because a commissioner steps away or is documented as leaving, as we often see in some of the written records when a member leaves but then shortly comes back? If quorum is lost technically because of that brief absence, is the meeting truly adjourned? And if so, what if the commissioner comes back Do we need to go through all the machinations of what if a meeting gets unexpectedly interrupted and providing the means and time and place and URL to reconvene the meeting? I think that was the question I raised in subsection 3. And also in subsection 4, reference to section 31308D. I'm using a heavily edited document. I don't know if that subsection still exists or if that pointer should be to a different section. Thank you.
Oh, that's a good question. I bet that hasn't been. I don't know. I really thought it would have applied to.
Well, if quorum is lost, it goes into an information meeting.
Yeah, well, so what I will.
You don't send everybody home.
So what I will say, and Kevin, the new Sunshine Law updated, I guess, law does make reference at the very least to virtual capacity. I'm not sure if it touches on in person, but it does say that, for example, if someone is to step away from a meeting for, say, 5 minutes for a bathroom break or something, they're not necessarily counting that as quorum lost, especially if the person returns relatively soon. But what I will say is, the way it is written, it says a meeting is adjourned when, and then it says quorum is lost. So that is something where even in the clearest case where if, a commissioner is to just say, I am leaving and leaves.
It doesn't necessarily mean the meeting. So maybe, change it to say something along the lines of meeting can be adjourned or may be adjourned rather, may be adjourned when the following happens in that way. So yeah, Kevin makes an excellent point because just because quorum's lost doesn't mean you're gonna adjourn the meeting. You may still have your meeting, just can't take action on stuff. But you can still take public testimony and things.
And we have a new procedure in place now. When we lose our virtual connection, we have to terminate the meeting.
That's outlined in the new law.
30 minutes?
Yeah, you have 30 minutes to get it
No,
back.
that's not in there either.
Yeah, so maybe for item number 4, we sort of need to go back and do some research on that particular.
You see all this new law stuff is piling in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the other 3 are okay. So when we look at a meeting is adjourned when a motion to adjourn, blah, 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 blah. So the first 3 subsections are fine. It's just number 4, we have some question about that, so we'll have to revisit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe in that first line, a meeting and strike out is and replace with may be.
I mean, you have to have a definitive thing, because you can't say may and then motion to adjourn, so I would say, retain is.
Also, it follows the logic of Robert's rules where it's almost like an input output, if this, then this, and that's what they're going with. Well, if there's no business on the agenda, why are you continuing to have a meeting? Like, that's kind of their logic, but.
But 3 and 4 need to be addressed because that doesn't fit then with that logic. At least as far as how we run meetings for the NCO.
Well, wait, what about number 3? So what's the objection there?
Because you can come right back. There may be something that they've got to, there's a disruption, chair adjourns the meeting, but then you come right back.
But the chair could recess the meeting.
Yeah,
So that's but if he adjourns.
Natural disaster.
Yeah, this is the fire emergency.
Okay.
So, that would be.
Okay, well then 4 is the only one that we.
It would be incumbent on the chair to say, no, we're just gonna do recess for 30 minutes or whatever, and then come back and then, but if he says.
Understood.
So just number 4, we're gonna have to, come back, but the rest seems to be okay.
And you added the virtual situation there too, right?
Right, we'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Do research. Okay. Get a bunch of those. All right, fun stuff. So next up we have our officers at 313.
So just really quickly.
Sorry, no. Kevin.
Okay. What do you want to say?
We're probably on the same.
Okay. Go ahead, Kevin, please.
Oh, in this case, might I defer to Mr. Witzel?
You might have, Kevin, you might have more than me after, but the first thing that just our office was looking at was the inconsistency between this section and the board section, which requires, the board section that requires a treasurer. How how to dispose of that issue, whether it's required, if it should be required, whatever, ultimately we'll leave that up to the commission, but there is that inconsistency, that just should be of note.
Okay, but they are two different, boards are not exactly the commission.
Yeah, I'd say, in my opinion, leaving the treasurer position in place is when you get into that perfect storm situation. The chair couldn't make the meeting, the vice chair couldn't make the meeting, the secretary, and you got your last fallback.
Yeah, and that's why, we've encouraged boards, because I know some boards have said, well, we don't really, if we're not gonna utilize that position because it's not necessary, then, we're just not gonna use it, but we still encourage them anyway to continue using it until maybe a resolve can be found. Whether that might be replacing it with a different officer position or something.
Well, it's just one or more vice chairs.
But you could allow flexibility and leave that up to the boards to decide whether they want a chair position, may have a treasurer. But when you have boards that have a second vice chair, that having an extra
That would
person.
take care of it.
Yeah, then you could say, get rid of the treasurer position.
Okay, so Kevin, was that, does that encapsulate what you were thinking, or do you have something else to add?
At least in part, and I appreciate the comments. I think I'll briefly go through what I had for 313 subsection A was if there were more than one vice chair that didn't have a specific first vice chair or second vice chair appellation, what if down the road when, for example, the chair is absent, how to decide which of those vice chairs has supremacy to take over the chairmanship of the meeting. And then secondly, with subsection A, I think it would be, I'll skip that one. I'll move to subsection B. Although the first sentence talks about the election of officers every year, the second sentence addresses the term of an officer, but an officer may assume an officership not at the first of the year. And so I wonder if clarification is needed as suggested that the term of the officer shall be for no more than 1 year, beginning in July or upon election and ending the following the 30th of June or until election of a successor. But that in turn raises the issue, well, if it's until election of a successor, what does it matter if there's an ending date for the term of an officer? I just wonder if there could be an explanation of that. Thank you.
Well, it would seem like to me is if you lost an officer like in May, then you're going to have a vote, or maybe even in June, you're going to have a vote at the next meeting. So,
How the chair takes it.
I don't know. It just doesn't. To me, it seems fine. I don't.
And my understanding when you vote on the vice chairs too, because I've had it where, but we had first vice chair, second vice chair, we were cleared. I've never seen it where they were just all called vice chairs. I've always seen it where it's first and second. That's intuitive. I think, I can't imagine anyone just calling them all vice chairs.
Yeah. There's got to be some kind of ranking order.
Pecking order.
Yeah.
So, do we have any other, or Kevin, is that everything, or?
Yes, I appreciate the comment by Ms. Paanui, but I think if there was a vice chair of X or a vice chair of Y, I think it's simpler if it's just clearly first vice chair, second vice chair. It's not mandated here, so it does present a potential complication if the commission were to someday get creative. The proviso I put in my testimony was that, well, it seems that the commission is often forming committees, which may supplant the need for any named job-specific vice chair. So I'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Go ahead, Tom.
Just one quick explanation, if you will. Please keep in mind that when we're talking about, stating that a term is 1 year, but you have the clause of, or until the election of a successor, that goes in both directions. Looking at the next section about removal of an officer, that successor could be elected in less than a year. So it covers both sides. And usually the condition is, we're not going to meet for the next 2 months or whatever. And so we'll take this up. We'll elect the officers at the next meeting that's scheduled. So it's really boilerplate type language, but it does cover both a term that ends shorter than 1 year, as well as a term that may, under circumstances, extend more than 1 year.
Okay, thank you. So,
I think that clarifies,
Okay.
just to clarify.
yeah, I mean,
Because I think it's written weird too, but I think with that explanation, I hope it's.
It's always boilerplate, unfortunately, in that way.
seems like it makes sense to me.
Makes
I'm
sense.
sorry. I
Well, I
don't know
mean,
why.
it says an officer shall be for 1 year or until the election of a successor, so why would you say it's 1 year if it could be longer than the election of a successor? But with that explanation, then.
Well,
Yeah.
the term is for 1 year, so the term of an officer, so the term is 1 year. It's just like our presidential term is X years. It doesn't mean the individual gets to serve 1 year.
Yeah, but even for them, they don't say, well, it's 4 years or until you elect a successor. It's just.
Well, or till a successor is appointed, or a successor takes the office. I mean, so we do have a succession line. Anyway, okay. Is there any motivation to change this?
No.
Okay, so awkward or not, I think it's good. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so next up is 314, removal of an officer. Do we have any public comment? Kevin.
Chair, thank you. This harks back to the comment I made earlier about how an officer, in this case a chair, would be removed from office if there was, or if this clause 314 would mandate that a removal of an officer would need to be a listed item on a published meeting agenda. And again, I just ask how that could happen if a chair was sought to be removed, but did not want to let such an item come to be on the agenda. Again, just trying to work around how that could ever happen. Thank you.
Well, I think as you brought up earlier that the committee did want to submit the same type of language that the boards have regarding putting something on the agenda. So there would be a delay, like if we wanted to remove the chair, but we will propose a mechanism for that, basically the same mechanism the board has. So that will be done. Tom, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry, real quick. To Kevin, was that the extent of your question? Or?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tom, go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I just want to say, in my mind, there's always an open question on this, because Kevin raises that good point of, does the removal of the chair need to be on the agenda? Well, in the larger sense, a good answer would be yes. But when you go to the parliamentary authority under Robert's rules, the removal of an officer is always in order. So if that board wants to take it up, it can take it up, because it is, just hear me out.
Okay.
Part of that argument over the years has been, this is an internal matter, okay, the selection of officers by the board members, but subject to public comment. So as long as the public is allowed to comment on it or whatever. So I'm saying in the big picture, by language in the plan or the rules of the commission, I think it's an open question in that regard. But the way in which I and others have dealt with it over the years is it kicks to Robert's rules, which is, you want to remove the chair, motion is always in order, can take it up.
So you don't believe that a removal of the chair is not covered by the Sunshine Law, since it's an internal administrative decision?
Right.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Sunshine Law in the sense of needing to allow public discussion, but that question of, if you don't know, if things develop in that meeting, that the members now wish to change an officer or whatever.
That doesn't seem to make sense. It's either covered by the Sunshine Law or not. I mean, I don't understand. Is it an internal operating decision, so it's not covered? Or if it's covered, how can it be covered under one sense and not another?
Well,
I'm just.
No,
I'm not trying to.
I'd like to argue both ways.
Okay.
Because over the years, nobody has ever taken me or others up on the challenge, if you will, that a motion to remove the chair is always in order. Do I hear a motion?
Okay.
Nobody steps up.
Wouldn't the plan supersede that?
Well, it supersedes sunshine, Robert's rules,
Yeah,
not
that's what I'm saying.
sunshine law.
Right.
I would have thought it would be covered by, I mean, that's just what my reflexive response would be, but I see what you're saying. And-
Yeah,
But I guess
think
it's unclear.
It's
So
it's in there,
unclear.
in the middle somewhere.
Um,
With,
okay.
it's a competition.
So in light of that, I'm sorry, Larry, did you want to add
No,
something?
it's on another issue with this.
Oh, okay. So in light of that, does anyone,
We had an incident, and this is just speaking from our office perspective of a board wishing to remove an officer, and they turned to us and were like, what's the process? How do we work this out? And then there were questions raised of like, if you're putting it on the agenda, is it in a way outing that person as this is an action the board wants to take? And is that appropriate to, have that put on an agenda and blast it out to everyone? The chair's name and saying we want to remove the chair and whatever. It's a very messy, complicated topic.
well, I mean,
In one way, it'd be easier to spell it out because then at least everyone knows this is how you do it. On the other hand, you run into those issues of someone feeling like they're being put on blast when you want to let everyone know a week in advance. Hey, we're going to kick this guy off the board or remove him as an officer.
would it be inappropriate then to use the complaint procedure process? Because basically then the commission can remove someone. Well, I don't know if they can remove someone from the commission and get back to that same issue. So I don't know. Well, I guess this is maybe something to think about if you'd like.
Yeah, I do want to add to one thing here that concerns me is an officer may be removed from the office by the commission when it says with or without cause. Without cause. There's got to be a reason to remove somebody because you're opening up.
Your guys rule. Yeah, but that's,
I'm just saying.
I would think that without causes, they just don't want to say.
Yeah,
It would be kind of
because
obvious.
I tried to think this in my head. What would be that scenario?
But you get elected every year. So I mean, someone would have to do something to.
Yeah, there has to be a cause. But the thing is, though, if you remove somebody without cause, that's a big question mark and opens you up for Pandora's box because there has to be. That's an equal opportunity issue.
But the problem is, if you have a cause, if you have to cite a cause, then that can open you up a lot more. If you can just say we're not telling you,
Well,
or
we're going to go after somebody for.
I mean,
for
I
The
get
majority
it.
would speak.
I get it.
I just have
That's a good
concern
point.
with that
What
statement.
speaks is the vote.
Yeah.
I mean, this is to remove.
Like, let's be realistic.
It's to remove them from office, not removing them from the commission.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's the point.
You just mentioned that I did not think of. When it comes to the voting process, they could be removed from that position because of a vote.
Well, yeah, the majority would.
Yeah.
I mean,
Obviously,
it-
the majority of this body would have to feel the same way.
Yeah, they would,
Okay.
if you
That
lose
would cover
confidence,
that.
If
if
they
you lose
abstain,
confidence in your, I mean, I assume it's just basically the chair. I mean, if you lose confidence in your chair, then maybe you should be removed with or without cause.
Yeah. The voting process does that, and I respect that.
I mean,
Maybe they're absent.
yeah.
Yeah, that was brought up earlier, but maybe they have absence.
Could be any
And you're like,
number.
I hate this guy.
But you'll still have quorum.
Yeah, but I do.
That's
I
good.
forgot where we are. Maybe we will.
You coming up on the
Removal of an officer.
Yeah, and I think 2 hours has been our max, so
Yes.
we'll go through, hopefully 316 and see how much we get. But anyway, so, with 3/4, or maybe we're stopping at 315. So at removal of officers, do I hear, a desire to make a change?
No.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Oh, okay, sorry, Stephen, what would you like? Okay, go
I
ahead, please.
I agree with Commissioner Larry. It's an open box to say removal of an officer without cause, that's not acceptable. You can't remove somebody without cause. So I would suggest striking or modifying that. And also, in this statement here, ask that the meeting would be dropped into executive session for whatever the proceedings would be.
Can't take that.
No.
Okay, so the executive session part of it, yeah, I guess we can't
Not
do
for
it.
that.
They have very strict.
Yeah, so
requirements
just
on
by
what
virtue
actually
of the
is.
law. As far as the without cause, you said you can't do it. What's your authority for that? Or where are you getting that from?
If you don't have cause, then there's no reason to remove somebody.
I mean, is
Right.
that just your opinion? So you're not saying
So
it's
that's why
by law?
The statement is too ambiguous. How can you remove somebody without cause? It doesn't make sense. So to put some
Well-
common sense into it, I would suggest removing that, striking that, or modifying it.
Okay, I would say
Yeah,
there
you
again.
can't remove somebody without cause.
Okay,
That's
so
a
I mean, but
dictatorship.
that's an opinion statement. I'm sorry. Just the way you made it sounded like it was a legal kind of issue or something.
No. You just can't
Okay,
do it out
okay, I
of
just
common
wanted to
sense.
clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say, I mean, it's just removing them from office, and if you don't have the confidence of a majority, now you get this game of maybe some commissioners show up, and then the commissioners who show up don't like you in that one meeting. They do.
Well,
I don't-
Dylan brought up the point, well, what if the chair is always absent? You know, so I could see that, but that's still with cause.
I mean, what if?
To me, I gotta
both
agree with
words?
Larry and Steve, I don't understand why I can't think of a single situation that you would remove an officer
Is that
without.
I just
Safe-
think people have a
safety?
sense of losing
Yeah.
confidence.
Is that out of respect?
Yeah,
But-
but even that's
I think-
cause.
I think,
I know,
I
but they
think-
don't want to state it.
yeah, and I think that's the key, is that you always have cause.
Yeah,
You don't always wanna make it public,
yeah.
you know? I
And,
mean,
and that's so if
Like
it's
with the
for
recusal
cause,
thing.
and then someone says, "Well, you're not an adequate leader, or you can't run a meeting," but they don't want to say that because that's not. That's what I'm just saying. Like you run a meeting like terrible, and
Then just strike that for clause and just say an officer may be removed from the office by the commission, period, at a meeting of the
yes,
commission.
general.
And just keep out the with or without cause, delete that.
Would that be suitable for you,
It's the same
Stephen?
thing.
Hold on, Tom. Would that be suitable if we
Just
just
reduce
delete
it.
those the with or without, and we delete that language?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, did you want to add something quickly?
Yeah, on the other side of that, by leaving the language as is, it answers the question that you may remove an officer for any reason. Because when you start getting into the for cause, then it starts beginning to sound like a
Well,
personnel.
that's why you remove
matter.
that phrase, period, you just remove it.
No, but by not saying it though, it leaves open that potential for argument.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, with that said, does the committee still want to remove it? Oh, well, I hear that's the consensus, so that's,
I think
That'll be
removing
okay.
it, I don't see the point of
Okay.
having it there.
So we're removing it.
yes, the comma
Yeah,
with or without
It's, you
cause.
basically, if you remove it, it's still the same thing.
I don't.
Okay, that's okay, we can
But
disagree on that.
we don't all disagree on everything.
Retain with modification.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think for our last, probably the last item that we'll take up tonight is 315, officer vacancy. And I didn't have any personal comments. Are there any public? Anyone want to add something from the public? Kevin, as always. You have anything?
Thank you, Chair. I think the principal question would be regarding subsection B in 315 about use of the term promptly. I wonder if this is the case where Robert's Rules of Order, we don't go to that because the document here is not silent about how the process works. Or if it's the case that if there is a removal of an officer, let's say, then when does that refilling or reappointment or reelection of his or her successor take place? Can it happen immediately at the same meeting without public forenotice, or must it be on the next meeting? Or for whatever reason, if a rogue chair did not want to put it on the next meeting, is there any consequence to that? So kind of three different issues. Hopefully we can clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, I would say if a road chair didn't want to put it on the agenda, the requirements and plans say it shall be done promptly, so it would be done. I mean, I don't see how they get around that unless you said they didn't put it on the agenda and then it becomes a sunshine law issue. We're a little vague on that anyway. So I would say, yeah, it'd have to be done. The other two questions, I'm not really sure.
I understand Kevin's sentiment about the when to actually do it, because that's something we run into with the boards. They'll ask us, hey, if we, you know, do say a person can no longer serve as an officer, but they let you know at the meeting, well, can you know, just appoint someone else as an officer? Does that meet the standard of something that needs to be placed on an agenda? We don't have an answer for that.
I would say yes,
Um,
because then you allow for public input if there's any issue, especially as Kevin pointed out in some of his comments.
We've normally recommended all that type of stuff to just defer it to the next meeting.
Yeah, exactly, which is promptly, you know, but then it also allows time for organization and comments.
Yeah, I think it's okay to, are there any other public, there are no other public comment words there?
It's the second time speaker, he just raised his hand again.
Who did?
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking about the comments just made. So if, for example, a chair was removed, there would not be a motion to reinstate a new chair. The vice chair then would take over that meeting until the next
Yes.
process, next meeting. Okay, so again, is there any need to clarify or exchange promptly with next meeting or something to that effect for subsection B?
I don't think so. Does anyone feel there's a need?
No.
I mean, I think we're all on the same page that it's explicit enough. If something comes up, then promptly, I mean, it's a little vague, but I mean, I don't see how much wiggle room you have. I mean, if someone says, hey, you need to do this, it says promptly, so.
It's fine.
Okay, so with that said, are there any sentiments to change this or retain this? Okay, so we will retain it. That,
Good, yay.
yeah, we didn't conclude our business, but so we're making good progress. I knew we wouldn't get through everything, so. We'll go back to the provisions that we said we were going to go back to if we've done the correct research. If not, then we'll put it off a little bit if we finished it in time. And otherwise, we'll go to the next provisions. I don't know. I'll look to see if we want to go on from there. One question I have is, so what does everybody want to do about a next meeting? Did we want to take December off?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
see a strong neighborhood
Yeah.
assistant vote to take.
No,
Take it
December gets so complicated.
Okay, so why don't we say January? It will probably be the same week, but we can call that to be determined. It'll probably be January, whatever. Was it the third week?
Third Monday.
Third Monday.
I'm looking at
So we can
20th.
tentatively.
Is that Martin Luther King?
Oh,
Is
yeah,
it?
that
Yeah,
is my.
20th is.
So why don't we just say tentatively, we will meet in January?
Okay.
And maybe we can do it the second Monday, or we can just go from there.
Okay.
And then you still gotta figure out what you're gonna do on the complaint, expedite. Complaint
Yes, and
process.
so I'm glad you brought that up. So just in case, just to reiterate, if the NCO, and they may have a proposal at that time, we may drop, but I mean, it'll be on the agenda. I mean, so everything will be on the agenda and people have public notice, but we may drop these provisions in lieu of just going
Or defer
directly.
them until the
Yeah,
next.
defer them
Defer
to
them, yeah.
until we're done with the complaint procedure process. So that's sort of driven by just the response we get from the NCO and how people feel about it and whatever. So, are there any last issues or last announcements? Let me just
That's good.
Kevin, is that you or is it Kevin?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, if NCO comes to the committee with proposals for changes to the complaint section, will that be made available for review prior to the meeting at which such will be discussed?
It will, yes. And just like I did this time, I actually had it done 3 weeks in advance on my site. So it was all there. I produced both the complaints. Actually, the complaints are already, the editable form is already on there, as you probably saw. And so, yes, and I'll let people know. So, yes,
Good.
it will be available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any last announcements?
Could you ask Arlene Velasco if she had anything she wanted, because she hasn't talked?
Well, it's sort of supposed to be on the topic we're having.
Yeah, it's
so
already
unless you had an
8:04, so-
announcement. Yes, go ahead, Dylan.
I did just want to note that one thing that I left off on this agenda that I want to move forward, I had it on a previous one, was putting the website that you created, the unofficial n-plan.org, that should be listed on here to help people.
Oh, that's a great suggestion.
And there was, Kevin pointed out, and I think he mentioned it, about when the minutes are sent out, that board URL is incorrect.
For new owner, yeah.
Yeah, it goes to my board. I kind of thought it was on the survey committee. So I said, I don't know how that happened. It wasn't mine. And so just kind of one of those weird things. But anyway, we're correct.
Right.
Any last announcements? Hearing none, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody. Very productive.
Thank you, guys. God bless.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody.